If you were to ask your average IndyCar fan to name a Finnish IndyCar driver, most people would draw a blank. Well, there have been a few, and one of them was JJ Lehto. Considered to have been a protege to 1982 F1 world champion Keke Rosberg, Lehto didn't find the success he hoped for in Formula 1, not getting a big break until 1994, where as a Benetton driver, injuries plagued his season. His time in IndyCar wasn't ideal either, as he only raced in one season. Driving for Hogan Racing in a full-time campaign, Lehto had an odd rookie year competing against a very intriguing rookie class. So today, I tell the story of JJ Lehto's strange 1998 kart season. Some of you may have heard of JJ Lehto before, but may not be familiar with his background. So to explain Lehto's career before he came to America, here's fellow IndyCar YouTuber Wad to explain his background.
JJ Lehto first started his racing career in 1974 in his native nation of Finland in karting, and throughout the next decade, he made his way up the Junior Series ladder, winning numerous championships before making his F1 debut with the backmarker Onyx F1 team, replacing Bertrand Gachot midway through the 1989 season. In his tenure at Onyx, Lehto failed to score a point, retiring or failing to qualify for most races, and so he departed for the Scuderia Italia team for 1991. He turned many heads by getting a podium at the San Marino Grand Prix that year, but left the team after the 1992 season due to the team's performance dropping. He joined Sauber for 1993, scoring a few points, but left at the end of the year after a collision with his teammate at the Monaco Grand Prix soured his reputation with the team. For 1994, he landed a seat with the frontrunner Benetton team, but an injury during testing made him miss a few races, and he was dropped at the end of the year due to his unimpressive performance, only scoring 1 point that year. After his F1 career stalled out, Lehto drove in GT and touring cars for a few years, in which he won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1995, but thirder success eluded him, and so for the 1998 season, Lehto decided to join the kart series with Team Hogan.
Lehto would drive for Hogan Racing in 1998, replacing Dario Franchitti, who had departed for Team Green after a fiery and inconsistent rookie year with Hogan the year prior. Despite Lehto's F1 career falling a bit flat, hopes were somewhat high for the year ahead, but not unreasonably high either. But the year ahead for Lehto and the team was pretty similar to the one Dario had the year prior, only even more inconsistent. The season would kick off at Homestead, Miami, where Lehto had a roller coaster weekend. He wouldn't set a time in qualifying, as he ran into gearbox issues. But coming into the race, he was certainly on the radar after setting the third quickest time in the morning warm-up. While the race itself wasn't flashy, Lehto still had a solid day. He'd finished the race that day in 14th, only one lap down. The best part of this result was the fact that Lehto was the highest finishing rookie, which was a great achievement. However, this 14th place finish was the best finish he had in the opening part of the year, as he soon hit some trouble. Motegi was certainly a low point, as after starting a mediocre 18th after qualifying was cancelled, Lehto would retire only 45 laps into the race thanks to an electrical issue. The biggest kicker to come from this race was the fact that Lehto was running around 15th when this issue took him out of the race. Certainly a big disappointment for both JJ Lehto and the Hogan team. Next up on the schedule was Long Beach, where Lehto had a pretty good weekend marred by a bad result. Entering the weekend, the team had gone the Hollywood spirit, with sponsorship from Universal Studios, with Lehto even carrying a Jurassic Park logo on the front wing. As for the results, Lehto started the race in 16th and moved up to 12th before the field came down pit road under caution. Lehto decided to stay out, and took the lead as a result. He'd stay in the lead for 5 laps, leading his first laps in the series. But after another yellow came out, Lehto came into the pits with an engine issue. While it didn't take him out of the race entirely, Lehto was relegated down the order, and eventually crossed the line 6 laps down, classed down in 18th place. Moving to Nazareth now, and while 16th place finish looked decent on paper, the luster of this result gets washed away when you realize that Lehto was the last of the finishers in that race, ending the day 7 laps down. Besides a handful of moments, the start of the year wasn't a bed of roses. It really exemplified the issue that rocked Lehto this year, and that was inconsistency. This point would be exemplified throughout the late spring and summer of 1998, a stretch that went from sweet to sour with the snap of a finger. Race 5 in Rio looked like it was going to be a dud of a weekend after qualifying, as his 22nd place start was his second worst so far in the 98 season. However, from this pretty woeful starting position, Lehto pieced together a fantastic recovery. Lehto made up 12 spots from start to finish, getting his first ever top 10 in the series with a P10 finish. He'd repeat the feat at the next race of the season in Gateway, with an even better weekend. In Gateway, JJ Lehto qualified for the race in a fantastic 4th. This 4th place starting spot would be his best in his time in the series. Lehto would convert the 4th place start to a 9th place finish, which was a very good result. Lehto was in a groove and had momentum on his side, so after he got his best qualifying and race results so far this season, you'd expect Lehto to carry the momentum through to the summer, but instead, the following 6 races would be as close as you could get to hell on earth. The nightmare began on May 31st at the Milwaukee Mile, where a weekend full of promise ended with a DNF just over the halfway mark. Lehto had started the race in a very impressive 8th, but thanks to overheating issues, he left the track with a 19th place finish, his second DNF of the year. Then a week later, Kart was off to Detroit, where Lehto had a truly abysmal weekend. Qualifying for the race in a woeful 23rd, Lehto only made it 17 laps into the race itself before he retired thanks to handling woes. Lehto was running last of the cars on track before he retired, a race result that capped off a poor weekend. Poor could be used to describe Portland as well, with JJ starting 24th and retiring in 25th with exhaust issues. All the momentum from Gateway a month prior was wiped away, but although Lehto had DNF 3 times in a row now, at least these weren't down to accidents. Lehto's first accident-related DNF came in the next race in Cleveland, where after starting the race in 21st, he piled into Greg Moore on lap 3, taking himself out of the race and leaving Lehto classed in 28th, stone cold last. A week later in Toronto, Lehto had another horrible weekend. He'd start outside the top 20 for the 4th race in a row, then have his 5th DNF in a row with a very hard crash in turn 6. Michigan was yet another gut punch, with another hard crash that destroyed yet another race car and left him in the infield care center for a while, although he wasn't seriously injured. 3 races, 3 hard crashes, 6 races in a row with DNFs. It was truly an awful 2-month stretch, where he only started in the top 15 twice, and destroyed any hope he had at winning the Rookie of the Year award. Thankfully for Lehto, the stretch of DNFs ended after 6, but the final part of the year still wasn't smooth sailing. The DNF streak was finally brought to an end in mid-Ohio, with a middle-of-the-road result. Lehto started 17th and finished 1 lap down in 15th. Again, middle of the road. Road America saw another DNF, this time down to exhaust issues. However, one positive to come from this race was the fact that Lehto led his 6th and final lap in the series. The topsy-turvy nature of the late stages of the year continued in Vancouver, as after starting 16th, Lehto made it all the way up to 8th by the checkered flag, getting his best result to this point, and his first top 10 since Gateway back in May. With the yin of a great result in Vancouver, came the yang in Laguna Seca. Lehto started the race in a solid 11th, but his race went down the tubes immediately as he made contact with Michael Andretti in turn 2, breaking Lehto's right front suspension and bringing his race to a premature end. The last 3 races of the year were all a tad different, starting with Houston, where JJ Lehto finished 10th from a 21st place start. A good result for sure, but a quiet day behind the wheel. In my video talking about this race, I didn't even mention Lehto once at all throughout that whole video, so it's fair to say that Houston was a very quiet yet solid run from JJ. However, the word quiet couldn't be used to describe the last 2 races of the year. The 18th race of the season would be at Surfer's Paradise, and it was the best race Lehto ever had in the series. Starting the race in 15th, Lehto cut through the field and kept it clean, bringing it home in a fantastic P5. Lehto was the highest position gainer of this race, and scored his only ever top 5. Sadly for him, Surfer's Paradise would be the last time he ever saw the checkered flag in a kart race. After starting 20th in the season finale in Fontana, an engine failure just short of the halfway mark left Lehto out of the race in 21st. Lehto would never race in the series again, moving to sports cars after 1998, where he found some decent success in the American Le Mans series and at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Lehto ended 1998 20th in championship points, and 3rd of all rookies, behind Rookie of the Year winner Tony Kanaan, and Lehto's replacement and future 4-time Indy 500 winner, Helio Castroneves. Lehto had an average start of 17.7, an average finish of 18.1, a shocking 10 DNFs, 5 top 10s, and a best ever finish of 5th. When I started working on this video, I had mixed feelings, and to be brutally honest, these really haven't changed. Lehto had performances that were mightily impressive, such as Long Beach and Surfer's Paradise, but this season was about as consistent as expired mayonnaise, and it cost him badly. If Lehto had been given more time with a better team, he might have been able to grab some better results, but we can only focus on what really happened, and what happened was a strange year from start to finish. Thank you all for watching, and have a great afternoon.